I am very grateful today to have a conversation with Kate Greenblatt. Kate, will you come on up?
Yeah.
Kate is wearing two hats. One of them is with Portland Fruit Tree Project. Portland Fruit Tree Project has been a longtime partner of ours, and yet I recognize that not all of us know that they're here and what they do. So I'm looking forward to having a conversation about that, as well as food justice and some other things on your heart. You may take a seat if you'd like.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Now, Kate, I really enjoy talking to you, and I can be pretty chatty. So I'm putting the timer on for 30 minutes, just so nobody feels like we're holding them hostage.
Of course.
Yeah. The very first thing I like to ask folks when I get to have a conversation like them with them like this, you know, words, is for them to introduce themselves the way that they want to introduce themselves, not how they appear on a bio, on a website, unless that's what they prefer. So let me start with that. How would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. I knew you were going to ask me this, and I was like thinking and thinking, but I figured whatever came out in the moment would be right. I think of myself as a young person, a queer person, someone who cares deeply about justice but is very new to the world. So I am figuring it out and exploring as I go, and following my gut as to where those places should be. Yeah.
Yeah.
That about sums it up, I feel like.
that works. I mentioned that you wear two different hats. I think now might be a good time to mention that in addition to Portland Fruit Tree Project, you are also an AmeriCorps volunteer.
Yes. Yeah, that's how it works. So there's a wonderful organization called the Confluence Environmental Center, which kind of channels the federal AmeriCorps program and connects people in Portland to all sorts of nonprofits, and there's some people in the school districts, all related to environmental justice in some way. So I got lucky enough to get paired with the Portland Fruit Tree Project.
Great.
Yeah.
Have you always been in Portland, or are you from somewhere else?
No, I am from kind of several places. I was born on the East Coast, but I mostly grew up in Berkeley, California, and then kind of moved up here 4 years ago, but also 5 months ago. It's complicated, but yeah.
Okay. I feel like there's some potential fodder for conversation during coffee hour.
Sure, yeah. Come ask me questions.
You can get a map out and...
Oh yeah, I can do the whole
Yeah. So what is Portland Fruit Tree Project?
Portland Fruit Tree Project is a small nonprofit that was started 16 years ago, but has really kind of come back 4 years ago or so, that cares for the fruit trees all over the city. So that's people's backyards and the random trees growing that they may or may not know how to take care of fully. That also means community orchards and urban orchards, like what is behind the church. This is the main site that I've been working at.
We'll pause for a moment.
Yes.
Does everybody know we've got an orchard in the church, like the church campus?
Yes.
Yes and no. Okay, great. I'm so glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah. So, yeah, the idea is there are so many trees in this city that grow food, and often they're not taken care of properly or harvested because it's so much fruit, and it mostly falls to the sidewalk. So Portland Fruit Tree Project, actually started by an AmeriCorps member long ago, stepped in to try to save that fruit and bring it to people who need it. Fresh fruit can be so hard to find and expensive. And so kind of tapping into this resource of free food that's all over the place, but just needs a little stewardship. So yeah, that is what we do.
Awesome. How much of the history of our relationship do you know?
I only joined in September, but what I have heard is this partnership between the church and Portland Fruit Tree Project started 7 years ago or so, because the folks taking care of the orchard couldn't quite do it anymore, and so we stepped in and have been working with it on it ever since. Yeah.
So we've got this orchard in the back, and there's these trees all over the city. Yeah. I've heard you mention a concern for ecological justice. Mm-hmm. I am wondering, of all the things you can be involved with, because, you know, being an AmeriCorps volunteer is a disruption of your life for like a year. Right. Why does this particular work matter to you?
I was very fortunate to grow up with access to amazing, healthy food. But I grew up, you know, in the Bay Area. It's the city. There's some green spaces, but I found my way with my parents to Astoria along the coast, and I got to work on a produce farm there. And I'd never been out on a land like that and helping produce food. And it was a really like touching experience where I was like, oh my gosh, this actually is where our food comes from. And so I am personally invested in like connection to land and kind of reclaiming that connection, which I feel is so often lost when we're just in the city and doing our thing, and you just go to the store and then there's just magically food, and how did it actually get there? So I've been thinking about that and learning about that. And I also care deeply about justice, and I was like, justice, environment, nature, these have got to be connected, and they are. And so I came to Portland knowing that there was a lot of work happening connecting those two things in this environmental justice sphere, which can mean so many things. But yeah, after being on a farm, seeing that food being produced, and then kind of learning about the Portland Fruit Tree Project and how there is all this food that's not being brought where it should get to go. So I was like, that is something I could get involved in and help make happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how does this work relate to justice? Now, you use this word stewardship. Is that it, or is there something beyond that, or, you know, you want to get into the weeds of how that works?
Yeah, I mean, the like weeds of it is we tend to all these trees throughout the year. Like this winter, we're going to be like pruning and such so that the fruit trees are taken care of and can produce as much fruit as possible. And then in the fall, we harvest in huge quantities with the help of volunteers. And then we have a fruit fridge, and we bring all the fruit to that space, and then different partners, food pantries, cultural centers, etc., come and collect that fruit and bring it and disperse it to their communities. So that is like nuts and bolts how it works. But I also think that every single person who is involved in this work naturally is able to grow their connection to the land that we're on, because you're out there in the middle of like these trees and this nature, and you're like, I don't know, you're up on a ladder like picking fruit. Like I feel like there's something so like deeply human and like earthling about that experience that I think we lose a lot. And so yeah. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it does. In my tradition, I would use the word spiritual. Like I think of tending to these things as a participation in the spiritual.
Yeah.
You know, because we are creatures, and often, you know, we have to be told, hey, go touch grass, because we're constantly interacting with a created world of our own making.
Yeah.
There's something so grounding, so humanizing.
Yeah.
About interacting with, you know, plants, and it's not something I'm good at. It's something I'm actually like quite bad at.
Well, come join us out there sometime.
I might. Have any of you ever joined with Portland Fruit Tree Project? Okay, what this tells me is we'll have to get into, like, at some point in this conversation, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
Like we've got this fence that's up all the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll get to that in a moment. Don't let me forget it, though.
Okay.
So you've mentioned how this project intersects with environmental justice to
Yeah.
an extent.
Yeah.
You've also, in some of our preliminary conversation, used this term called food justice.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, what is that, and how does your work intersect with it?
Yeah. So the idea of food justice is that people should have access to food, and healthy food, and enough food, even abundant food. And that is so hard in this society where, you've described this area as a food desert, where like some neighborhoods have amazing grocery stores and some have terrible grocery stores, and some folks can pay for healthy food, and for some folks that's totally inaccessible. That's just the way that this society and capitalism and racism have all intersected to make that so unequal. Some people even call it food apartheid instead of a food desert, to talk about how it is deeply related to how the system works and perpetuates itself. And so for us, kind of taking a hold of these free resources that, yes, take some labor to make happen, but being able to take this fruit that is growing all over the place and giving it directly to communities who most need that access is moving a little bit closer to justice, because it doesn't have to go through this whole system where the price gets marked up and like good fruit only goes to certain stores and not others. It is just like directly, here is a bunch of delicious fruit for you right now. And there's also a term that I love called food sovereignty, which is the goal ultimately for communities and individuals to have control over what food they eat, where it comes from, and it even relates to farmers. Farmers should get to choose how they grow their food, how they distribute it. So it's kind of completes this cycle in a much more ethical and, I think, connected and community-focused way. So.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I do think of this area as a food desert. That's actually part of the history of our congregation and how we began using some of our property for the benefit of those beyond our walls. I was talking to a colleague a couple of months ago, and they're at a different church, but they are over here all the time. And they're like, yeah, I heard somebody say this is a food desert, but I'm like, there's a Winco right there. And then I went and I shopped in the Winco, and I realized it takes forever to get checked out whenever I'm there. And I also wondered, why does a grocery store have to be open 24 hours a day? And then I realized, because people work all sorts of hours of the day, especially over here, and not all of these food items are accessible to everybody. Somebody else was like, yeah, but we've got like another grocery store too. We've got the vegan grocery store down there. Well, yeah, we do. And a Fred Meyer up the way. And yet we still see dozens and dozens of people come to our congregation 3 days a week to get food, because people are not able to get their needs met. As well as, most of us are connected to Snowcap in one way or another. We have people even in this neighborhood who drive 15, 20 minutes or take the bus to go get food at Snowcap.
Yeah, because in order to access those grocery stores, sometimes you need a car or several hours to like get there from wherever you actually live. And you need the money to buy those things, and sometimes you even have to like look presentable to even be allowed in the store. There's so many layers that you don't think about.
Or even to just not be harassed, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, but this is like a different channel. It doesn't deal with that. Even what you guys do on Wednesdays is an element of that. Whoever you are, come and we will serve you. Simple as that.
And it's a Band-Aid. Like when we know it. Band-Aids matter. Cuts need to be tended to. And yet You know, part of our congregational connection to Portland Fruit Tree Project and the community garden is, you know, we do want to go beyond the Band-Aid, you know.
Yeah.
As well as our restorative justice team. So what's the specific focus of your position?
Yeah. So what I get to do is hang out with like 10 high schoolers, mostly here, but also in other parts of the city. They're mostly from this neighborhood or adjacent. They're paid interns, and I get to make them, or try to make them care about trees and soil and pollinators. And so we've been doing all sorts of things. We were harvesting a ton earlier in the fall. We were learning about soil and like mason bees, and we're gonna like learn about pruning next Saturday. So it's really like bringing these teenagers into this natural space, introducing them to the possibility and concept of growing food straight from the earth, getting them involved in the whole kind of environmental world in Portland. They've gotten to see lots of different farms and orchards all over the city, but we're trying to focus here because this is, you know, they're from this area, so this is their orchard too, and your orchard too. Yeah.
Yeah, I've not met many of them, but I interacted with one of them who was like, yeah, my family and I were here a few years ago, and now I get to do this. That's awesome.
It's good to hear that secondary impact because, you know, teenagers just kind of love to act bored because it's safe. But it's good to know that maybe they do care and they are getting something out of it.
Yeah. No, I don't know how this person is on, you know, when he's with the rest of you, but he had a smile on his face, and yeah, it's the same person who was like, I don't think we're meeting today, and I'm at the building, so what do I do?
Classic.
Yeah, that was last month.
Yeah.
Why does empowering and educating the teens that you work with matter to you?
I think it matters. It's weird to be the age that I am because I feel like I'm on the edge of completely being consumed by technology, but I like narrowly escaped it. And so I think that they can get so caught up in the, like, not necessarily urbanity, but just this multi-layer structures and civilization that we live in that forgets about the land. And I think that the future that we need to be heading towards as a civilization in order to survive long term is to come back to the land. And so getting them to see that and connect with it and feel the importance and kind of that felt experience, I don't know, it gives me hope that that is possible, and we can keep returning to that as much as possible. And also just like for them to learn how to harvest, know what fruit looks good and what doesn't. We've gotten to do a lot of like baking and fruit preservation. We've been making jams and apple cakes and empanadas and all sorts of things I think are just really good like practical skills, where they could, you know, I started doing it. I can only imagine they started doing it too, where you're walking down the street and you're like, oh, that's a pear tree, that's a fig tree, oh, these figs are ripe, I'm gonna pick some. Like that is something people don't even think of as a possibility, but you can totally do it. You just have to know what you're looking for.
Yeah. I was speaking to some folks who are involved in housing justice and transitional housing, and they're sharing that one of the things that they're working on is teaching people how to make food.
Yeah.
And this is so that, you know, the folks that they're working with are housing insecure, but they have jobs. They receive SNAP benefits, some of them, most of them.
Yeah.
And they need help in figuring out, like, how do I get this to stretch?
Yeah.
You know, for me or my household for like the whole month. And knowing how to cook is not something all of us get, you know?
Yeah.
Some of us have been canning since we were like 3, and most of us do not know square one of canning.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet, if you are wanting to make this, like get this fruit that could last you months and months and months, and could be the difference between skipping meals or having nourishment throughout the day, canning is very important.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, that is how, and there's this whole topic about the importance of eating seasonally, and this is how you do it. And while there's so much fruit that you can't even eat all of it, you save some, and then you can have it in the middle of winter. You can whip out your pear butter or whatever and enjoy the sweetness of the fall.
It's not just hipsters who should know how to do this stuff, I think,
true.
right? But I do think there's this reputation of like, oh, urban orchards and harvesting fruits and canning. That's like hoity-toity hipster stuff. It does.
You were talking about how the Wednesday programming feels like a bit of a Band-Aid, but the Band-Aids matter.
Yeah.
Something that has helped me a lot is this idea that there is no one perfect or one ultimate solution to all of the problems going on, but that every single part solution is part of the whole. And so yes, we're working specifically with fruit from trees. That is such a niche, but it's also part of all of the food that there is, and so it's not fixing everything. You can't live off of just fruit, but also fruit is delicious, and everyone should get to eat it. So that is important too. Joy is important too.
Joy is important too. I'm going to try not to go off on too many tangents so that we can cover all of these things. There's also a potential vocational component to the training that you help provide, right?
Yeah.
Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, these interns are learning all sorts of things beyond just fruit tree and prune and harvest. We're learning about soil. They're getting to see other farms. We're working on the bioswales out here. They're also learning skills like tabling at events, and just interacting with the public and working on a team of diverse coworkers. I think all of that is super important. The basics of this is how to have a job and communicate and show up on time. I think it hopefully is kind of a well-rounded experience where there's practical and logistical and how do I get where I need to be on time and all of that. And these are people between 14 and 18, so they're at different levels, but they're all kind of building up these skills. It should look good on a resume, I hope.
Yeah. So what are some ways that we and our neighbors can be involved or be helpful with the work that you do?
Yeah. One thing is if you have a fruit tree, or if your neighbor has a fruit tree and it never looks like anything's happening, maybe a gentle reminder hey, you could be doing something with that fruit. We have a lot of capacity to harvest, and we do harvests all over the city.
Is there a cost to the harvesting? If one of our folks is oh, I have a fig tree and figs for days.
Figs for days, we love it. We ask for a donation for the time of the volunteers, and kind of the labor of getting all of those, climbing up on ladders and all of that. Scary sometimes. But it's never, I don't think it's ever required, because our goal is get the fruit, get the food to the people. But yes, donation always appreciated.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's that. There's also volunteer days at places all over the city, this orchard included, but there's other orchards. In the fall, there's a lot of harvesting, there's different amounts of physical labor required, but not all of it is like that. And so just showing up, hanging out, being curious, talking to other people about what's going on. There's a lovely couple who just comes and takes the fruit and distributes it to a particular food pantry, and so they're just kind of transporting and driving. There's so many different components that makes it all work. Our team is 5 people, and so there's so many other people who make it actually possible. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you have any Well, if we happen to have our calendars out and we're interested in like maybe something this month or next month or in the month after that to come and help out, when do you do that? Like, is there a specific day every month?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't get a flyer, but you all have
Oh.
flyers. It's okay, they're in my brain, I think.
Okay.
There are two, we call them work parties coming up here, the 1st of February and the 1st of March. It's a Saturday, 10 to 12, and that's back here.
Is it always the first Saturday of the month?
I think so, yeah. I haven't been to all of them, but it's normally first Saturday of the month. And then there's a couple more events happening here. We're doing a native plant sale, partnering with another organization or two, and that is at the end of April.
Where's that going to be?
That is going to be right here in the parking lot.
Okay.
Yeah, and more information on that is coming, but everything is on our website. We update it regularly. And we're also hosting a free spring break camp for all the kiddos, and that is at the end of March, and that is also here. So lots of here stuff. And there's also stuff all over the place, but I figured I'd let you know about the things that are here.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, those are my main questions. I'd like to turn it over to the room and see, like, what are the questions or the thoughts that you happen to have for Kate's? All right, we got two right out of the gate here. Let's go first to Diana and then to Blair.
Okay, apples are so nummy, but so we love them, and so do the bugs and the worms. And
Oh, yeah.
is there a natural? Do you spray them like organic apple orchard people do with it?
There are a couple different methods. I'm still learning this, but you can like put a nylon sock over every apple, apparently, or you can like spray it with this clay mixture. It's tricky to do organic and not use anything. I have also learned that the healthier the tree is, the more resilient it is to that kind of thing. So it actually doesn't need as much of that maintenance. But yeah, the bugs are real. That's why whenever we harvest, especially because so many of these trees haven't had completely like well-rounded care, we have A apples for eating and B apples for giving to cideries or baking with or whatever. So it's like you wouldn't want to eat it, but if you cut out all the places with the bugs in it, it's still food and you can still do something with it. Yeah.
That's some real life stuff right there.
That is, yeah, that was my whole fall.
I was wondering, do you have a relationship with master gardeners, out of the Oregon State University?
No, I don't think so. Not yet. We have a lot of relationships with a lot of people, but that name has not come up.
Well, there are a lot of master gardeners out there, and I bet there's a good possibility of a connection with you. I'll help you with that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, Rita has a question. Here's the microphone.
Oh, thank you. Yes, as far as, of course, it costs the farmers a lot of money to grow them, fertilizers. It's too bad if they can just have more land for growing things, trees, and then farmland, more farmland, the better. And maybe they have, I heard where they're trying to find ways to, a different type of fertilizers, natural kind, that might help them grow better and be resistant to insects.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rita.
And if they can grow so much for fruit and vegetables, set aside plenty of lands, maybe the price can stay down where it'd be more accessible for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal. I have been seeing, we're not the only ones doing this kind of work in the city. There are so many amazing organizations. I was just in a meeting with them yesterday, kind of to network and resource share, and there are these tiny farms all over the city where they are growing so much food in such a small space. It's really amazing. It's like, it's happening.
Yeah.
It's such like on the ground, tangible, immediate, in the weeds, in the bugs kind of work. But it's so reassuring to see how many different spaces are doing this. And I think Portland is really special in that way. We're not the only ones by any means, but there's a lot of that happening here. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Do you have any connections to schools in the area?
Yes, I mean, that is where my interns came from, is all the schools we reached out, and we've done a couple like partnered harvests with a few schools, but nothing, I don't know what kinds of connections you're thinking of.
Oh, I figured that must be the case.
Yeah.
Like, I should ask, how do, oh.
Okay.
Shh. Any other questions? Any half-baked questions or concerns?
I have a question about the distribution of the fruit you harvest. Does
Yeah.
it end up in a wide variety of places?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Two names that come to mind are the Bethlehem House of Bread, which is out in Tigard. I got to go with them once and see their whole food pantry in the process. That was amazing. I also know that a lot of it goes to the Community for Positive Aging, and there's, oh my gosh, I don't remember, but like kind of like an Asian senior organization that we work with. I don't even know the full list. It's like all these different moving pieces in the organization, but we are trying to get it to an even wider variety of people because there's just so much of it.
it's great.
Well, and you and your organization have worked with us for managing this campus even beyond the orchard, right? Like working on the bioswale with Jesse and Steve. I didn't know what a bioswale was.
Me neither.
What is, Steve, how would you describe a bioswale?
It's a vegetated strip to capture stormwater runoff. Yeah. Rainwater runoff and melting
That was
snow.
great.
Yeah.
It's also something we have to do. So it's always good to get help.
Yeah.
Stephanie, did you have your hand up? No. Okay. She was just stretching. All right. If all hearts are clear, I'm just going to thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Giuseppe.
Hey, you're welcome.
Awesome.
I love getting to know what our partners are doing, what ways that we can get involved. And here you've been for like 7 years, and a lot of us, you know, are just getting familiar with the work now. So what a great way. It sounds like you're the first Saturday of the month, you're willing to take any help you can get, even people who have brown thumbs, burning magma red thumbs, you know, come and help.
Absolutely. There's something, even if you just put on some great music for us, that is also important.
Great. And the work goes to a good cause.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, good
Oh
question.
my goodness. Okay, here's
Quiz
the
time.
list. Here's the list as far as it's a lot of different kinds of trees. There are apples of a couple different varieties. There are pears. There are Asian pears. There's a quince tree. There's figs. There's persimmon. There's pawpaw, which is a native fruit. There's a pomegranate. There's an olive tree. I think there might be a mulberry, so I heard recently. Oh my gosh. Any that I'm forgetting? Persimmon, did I say that?
Can you think of any that might be missing?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Jesse says a couple of peach trees.
Peach? Wow. No, but yeah. There's so many. It blows my own mind.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Are you going to stick around after the service for some fellowship time?
Yeah.
Cool, because we're a big cookie and coffee crowd, and if,
fantastic.
you know, you want to pick Kate's mind, that's a great time to do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.